Hi, this is Kelly with Plaid Let's Paint Art Lessons, and today we're going to be talking all about pop art and the emotions of color. To start today's lesson off, I've gone ahead and gone to plaidonline.com/letspaint, and I've printed off these great printables. On here we have some examples of what we're going to be painting. We have the different concepts we're going to be covering, a supply list, a little bit about Andy Warhol, who is the artist who inspired this project, as well as a link to our kit, which includes 23 bottles of paint and a 2-ounce bottle of Mod Podge, as well as 10 different size brushes to help you paint lots of different things. In our printables, we've also included a color wheel that's great for referencing during your painting. We also have these practice sheets that include some fun geometric animals, as well as suggested palettes to paint the different ones. We have an ostrich, a lion, and a sea turtle. Each of these palettes that we've suggested are a little bit different because we're talking about the emotions of color and how different colors are related to different feelings. Each of the animals uses a different palette that associates with the mood that that animal evokes. So I'm going to pour my palette and we'll get started. I've gone ahead and poured my apple barrel acrylic paint into my palette. I'm going to tell you what colors I've used as well as the other supplies you're going to need for this project. So I've used some white, lime tree, new shamrock, aquamarine, Caribbean, cool blue, and cobalt hue. You're also going to need your number 10 round brush, your number 3 round brush, a number 1 liner, a number 8 flat brush, and a number 12 flat brush. I have a container of water to help me clean off my brush. I also have a pencil, a canvas, this one's 9 by 12, my printables from plaidonline.com/letspaint, some tape, and then I printed off a picture of a sea turtle. You could print off a picture of a sea turtle, or you could print off a picture of any animal that you'd like to paint. You could even make it fun and paint your own pet. Okay, let's get painting. So the turtle that I printed off is the same one that I used to paint this painting. And I'm going to show you a trick to transfer the image onto the canvas. I've gone ahead and on the back of my image, used my pencil and shaded all over the back where my turtle is. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that image and I'm going to lay it on top of my canvas. I'm tilting mine a little bit just to give it a little bit more visual interest. I'm going to use a piece of tape to hold it in place. And then I'm going to use my pencil and I'm going to trace right over the lines of the turtle. So I'm also, in addition to outlining the shape of the turtle, I'm coming inside of his body and I'm also going to draw in the main lines. Things like the shape patterns on his face, the shapes of his eyes. There's some eyelid wrinkle parts around his eyes. I'm going to trace those as well. And that's just going to help me whenever I start painting to distinguish where everything goes. I'm also getting some of the bigger shapes of spots on the turtle's flippers. I'm going to leave the tape down, but I'm going to lift up and make sure that I have all of the details that I need. And I see a couple lines that I want to get again. I missed the first time. Okay. That looks pretty good. I'm ready to start painting now. Now I'm ready to paint. I've gone ahead and gotten some paper towels. That's going to help me keep my brushes clean and dry. I'm grabbing my number 12 flat brush and I'm going to put some dark blue onto my brush. You may have noticed too that I have my surface covered. I didn't say that in the supplies, but it's always a good idea to do that to protect your surface. And while the apple barrel acrylic paints are easy to clean up, this just adds that extra layer of protection to your table or desk or the surface that you're painting on. In addition to painting the front of my canvas, I always like to paint the edges. It just gives the painting a more finished look, especially if you plan on hanging it on your wall or sitting it on a shelf. And I'm just painting with some horizontal stripes. Along the bottom of my canvas, using dark blue. So while I've chosen these calm colors, the blues and the greens to paint with today, you can definitely choose a palette that matches your mood or your feelings. This is a great way if you are feeling very happy or frustrated or excited about something, to get your emotions out by selecting colors that make you feel those different feelings. So now that I have some dark blue on the bottom part of my canvas, I'm going to swish off my brush in the water, dry it off a little bit, and I'm going to move to this darker blue-green color. I'm going to paint that right up to my turtle, to the edges. I'm just going to cut in to the edges of his body. And I'm going to blend this color into the wet, darker blue. This creates an ombre effect of the colors together. It makes it feel a little bit more realistic, like the sea. We know that the sea, because of the sunshine, is a little bit lighter at the top, and as we get deeper into the water, it gets darker blue. And continue this medium blue-green right up above the turtle's flipper. I'm going to swish my brush off, change colors. Now I'm going to take some white and I'm going to start painting at the top of my canvas. This time I'm going to go into my lighter blue-green color. I'm going to use that to smooth out the transition between my darker blue-green and my white paint. So again, cutting out and painting with horizontal stroke. And I'm going right up to the lines that I drew for the turtle. You can also go back if you see any spots where you didn't get covered the way that you would like for it to be, and touch up those spots as you're working. So the background is looking good. It has a nice gradient to it, an ombre effect that goes all the way from a very light color to a dark color. And that feels very much like the sea or the ocean feels. Next, I'm going to start painting my turtle. I'm going to go ahead and switch to a little bit smaller of a brush. I have my number 8 flat right now. And I'm going to begin painting the turtle's face. I call it his nose. I'm not sure if that's technically what turtles have, but today this turtle has a nose. So I'm starting with my dark green. And by looking at my picture of the turtle, he has darker sides to his nose and it gets lighter toward the middle. So I'm painting it darker, and then I'm going to clean off my brush. And while that paint is wet, I'm going to bring in some of my lighter yellow green, and I'm going to let those two blend and right on the canvas. So you can see there that I'm starting to get that same ombre effect that I did in the background, only this time it's on the actual turtle. So then I'm going to take a little white and I'm going to paint in the middle. And again, I'm going to blend those right onto my canvas, mixing my lighter paint into the darker paint, and it gets a gradient effect to it. All right, now I'm going to paint underneath the mouth Here's his nose, and then we have a line for his mouth. So I guess this is his chin. So I'm going to paint, again, dark green on the sides, a little bit in the middle. His chin has a bit of a two-toned effect to where it's darker on the sides and darker in the middle, and then in between it gets lighter. Putting a little white in there just for the lightest part. So now I'm ready to paint my turtle's cheeks, and again I'm using that darker green right on the edges. Also going to get the lines on the forehead. And then I'm going to switch my brush, since those are smaller areas. I'm going to go to my 10 round brush. I'm going to take my medium green and paint in, blending in with the darker color. Making it feel like it is transitioning in a gradient from dark to light. Now I'm going to get some white and finish off that transition from my medium to my lighter color. Again, just mixing right on the canvas, that wet paint into the wet paint. Gonna put some lighter right at the top of his forehead. Sometimes if my brushes start separating, I get a little bit of water on the bristles just to help them stick together. His face is starting to have some pretty good dimension at this point. So I'm going to move on to his tummy. His tummy is underneath, so it gets a darker green color. The way he is, he's at what's called a foreshortened view, which gives you a bit of an extreme sense of perspective and causes some of the areas to look more compact and compressed. And his face is protruding out over the rest of his body, so we get his stomach seen just a little bit. Now I'm going to get his underarms. Again with that darker green. And transition to the lighter green. And then for his shell, I'm going to start with white up toward the top. And I'm going to pull in some of that lighter green. And continue blending that down toward the bottom. Bring a little bit more of my white back in there. Okay, now I'm ready to put a coat of paint on the flippers. I'm going to start with my darker green at the bottom. Transition to medium. And then I'm going to pull some of the whiter on, or some of the white right on top of the flipper and blend that in. And do the same thing on the other flipper, starting with my dark green at the bottom. This would be such a fun project to do if you have a friend or a family member who has a pet or a favorite animal, and to paint them their favorite animal or their pet using these same techniques. There's lots and lots of possibilities for this. Maybe your school has an animal mascot. That would be something fun to paint too. Okay, so lots of gradients going from dark to light so far on the turtle, just to differentiate the different parts of the form, the face, and the flippers, the body. I'm going to switch to my smaller brush now. I have a number 3 round brush, and I'm going to come in with some of my blue-green, the darkest blue-green. Where I drew the lines around the turtle's eyes to show the wrinkles or the eyelids, I'm just going to outline those and kind of draw them back in with that darker blue-green color of paint. I want to emphasize the turtle's eyes, and so bringing in some of that blue-green just helps it to contrast a little bit more with the turtle's body. So into that blue-green, I'm going to take my lime green, that medium green that I was using to transition from dark green to white, and I'm going to come in between where I drew the lines with the paint for around the turtle's eyes. That just helps that stand out a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm ready to start bringing in some darks onto my turtle. To do that, I'm going to take my darkest blue, and I'm going to look where I see dark shapes and dark areas on the turtle. So the first place that I see that is underneath his nose and his mouth area. So I've still got that small liner brush. Sometimes I like to even take a little bit of water and put some paint with it, and it just makes it a little bit thinner and nicer to flow whenever you're getting line details like this. So I see a little bit of shape here. I'm going to call it a freckle. I don't know if turtles have freckles, but this one does. I'm also just bringing in some darker lines right where the darkest part of the green is, just to help emphasize some of the areas. I've also got the turtle's nostrils that I'm going to draw in with my brush. A little bit underneath on the belly. I see some more shapes. They're just kind of rounded little brush strokes. Up on the shell, I also see some other almost squiggly lines that show the patterns on the shell. See some more here. Alrighty, I'm also going to paint the turtle's eyes. They're very dark, so I'm going to paint them with my darkest blue. Okay, so I'm going to switch to this little bit lighter of a blue. It's still dark, but it's not the darkest one. This one I think is the cool blue. So I'm just going to add in a little bit of that cool blue in some areas to add some more darker sections. See some lines and patterns around the eyes a little bit. So I'm going to put some of those in. Again, we're just going to call them turtle freckles. I'm also going to start painting in the spots on the flippers. And these are kind of polka dot like, but a little bit more irregular, elongated pieces than just round circles. Now I'm going to switch back to my blue-green. Come in and get a few more details in there. Painting in some of the shell. Okay, I'm going to start adding in some highlights now. These are going to be the lightest parts of the turtle, and this is really going to make him pop. So for this, I want to have a very clean brush. I'm going to switch back to my smallest brush, that #1 liner. And with my #1 liner, I'm going to use some white. So I mix a little bit of water with that just so that it flows a little bit better. And I'm going to put a highlight in each of the eyes. And that's just a little dot of white with the tip of my brush. And that really livens up his eyes a little bit. More than they were. Gives them some life and some personality. Highlight a little bit. The side of his nose, above his mouth, maybe a little bit on the eye. wrinkles, eyelids, and in between some of these spots, especially more at the top because that's where it's lighter. Got a little too much water on my brush that time, so get that off of there. Come back and get the highlight that I wanted the first time. Come back and put a little dark under his nose. This is too the part where if you look and you think, okay, well I could use a little more dark there or a little bit more light there. This is your opportunity to add in those things that it needs. Take one last look at it. See if there's anything else I think that he needs. Looks pretty good to me. I think he's finished. I enjoyed painting that so much, and I hope that you did too. Those different blues and greens are so calming. They're such relaxing colors, it makes me think of my favorite place, the beach, where I go to relax. For more ideas and inspiration, go to plaidonline.com/letspaint.